Hey, we're back.
Yay, great. So this is live. This we're recording. It worked.
All right, cool.
But you haven't, are you recording now?
Yes,
Okay, so you turned on the recording already then.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
All righty then.
But I mean, I don't think there's any pressure, any rush to like have like
No.
a video that's like a solid presentation. I just think that as long as we get through it,
I agree.
it's fine.
All right, so want me to go first? It's first on the list.
Sure.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Getting this Excel out of the way. There's a sharing screen. Okay. So I've got this here. This is my loops.
No, wait. What we're seeing, yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So what I've got here, it's just an HTML, and so this is for loops. So I'm just printing a thing, just explaining what it is. And so I've got a for loop right here. And so I've got, this is just simple showing how for loops work. So I've got variable I equals 0. And so for every, or until I is less than or equal to, while I is less than or equal to 10, it'll do this, and then it'll increment it. Or well, I guess I don't mean like a while as in a while loop, but just for every time it's less than or equal to 10, it'll print to the screen line whatever number I is, and then it'll go to the next line down. And so really quick, I'll just comment this out so we don't see that yet. And so there it is. So it's printing line 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because it's once it gets to 10, then it stops. So I'll comment that out now. And uncomment this one. And now that's just left over from the 4 one. So right here, so I've got while j, which is started at 0, is less than 95. I increment it by 5, and I write j is whatever j is, which is still less than 100, and then go to the next line. And so until it's equal to, while it's less than 95, it'll print j is 5, 10, 15, 20, etc., which is still less than 100. And then once it's 100, it's going to stop. But it's not like set up with functionality to be less than 100. It's just like how it ends up being, I guess. So any questions on loops? And I'll be using, I think I used them in some of these other ones too, but any questions on those at the moment?
I don't think so.
All right.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, not for me.
All right. So here's conditional statements. And so for this, I've got all this to show different pieces, and I will comment this out because this is not for this just yet. All right. And I will start this one. So what this does is it makes an age variable, and so it prompts you for your age. And once you enter your age, it prints, "Welcome to the PG-13 only movie theater." And then it goes to new lines. And so here's an if statement. So if your age is greater than or equal to 13, it prints, "You may go and see a PG-13 movie." So let's check that out. Okay. And so now let's say 12. Well, there's no other contingency for that, so it doesn't it doesn't say anything. So what we want to do there is we'll comment this out and comment this in and save that and reload. And so right here it says if age is greater than or equal to 13, you may go in to see the PG-13 movie, but if your age is not greater than or equal to 13, it says you're too young to see this movie without an adult. So 12, young, come back when you're older. But say you've got your parents with you. Comment this out, comment this in. And so this is an if else if statement. So if your age is greater than or equal to 13, you can go in to see the movie. Else if your age is less than 13, it goes into this where it makes a variable with parents. Confirm, are your parents with you? And so that's like a Boolean. And so if with parents value to true, it prints you may go in to see a PG-13 movie with your parents. Else, so if you're not with your parents, you're too young to see this movie without an adult. The same thing that's in the if else statement up there. So save that and reload. So 13, you may go in. 12, are your parents with you? No, you're too young to see this movie without an adult to come back when you're older. So 12, yes, my parents are with me. You may go in to see a PG-13 movie with your parents. So that's an if-else-if statement. And we've got an if-else built in that as well. Now we'll comment this out. And there we go. Oh. Boy, got a lot of comments here. I should have labeled them a little better. Just take care of it this way, right there. And need solution some other time. And so here's a switch statement. So here we've got, it'll print to the screen who's there. And then we've got this function, which we'll also go over later with the functions. And so this is enter Batcave function. And so it makes a name variable, prompts for your name. So we've got a switch statement here. So when the entered name is Batman, it says welcome to the Batcave Batman. And if it's Robin, welcome to the Batcave Robin. If it's Joker, Joker, no clowns allowed. And the default is access denied, releasing the hounds in 3, 2, 1. So we'll save that and we'll reload this. So who's there? Batman, welcome to the Batcave. Robin, welcome to the Batcave. Joker, no clowns allowed. And Bob, access denied, releasing hounds in 3, 2, 1. And you want to make sure you got the breaks. When I was doing this, I forgot the breaks first time. And so when you forget the breaks, it goes through all of them. So you want to make sure you remember the breaks. Okay, so any questions on those?
No, that's great.
Yeah, those are great examples.
Thanks. All right, so now we got some functions. This is just simplest function you could ever have. It's just function, hello world, parentheses, and these parentheses are for parameters, which we'll go over in the next one. And so this function, in a function you create the code, but you don't execute it. So if to execute it, you got to call the function. So hello world, it's being called right there. And hello world, because it calls it right there. But I'll go on to this one, which has some better stuff. This one is for variables, parameters, and functions. And so the function uses all of them. And so we've got variable for name, title, spouse, age, and a Boolean for is married. Well, Boolean style. Or actually, yeah, it is a Boolean. It just, you don't have to declare the Boolean type. You just do it with what you declare it with. So we've got the name, title, spouse, age, is married. And so for name, Hank Hill, assistant manager, Strickland Propane, spouse, Peggy Hill, age 48, is married, true. And so this is the function, introduction function. And so we had those parentheses in the hello world. And so in the parentheses, we're passing these parameters, which we are able to use in the function. So we're passing the name, title, age, is married, and spouse variables. And we're using them in the function. And so we're using an if statement. So if is married is true, and it is. The document writes, hello, my name is name, next line, I am title, next line, I am married to spouse. And so that makes the function. And here we call the function. And when you call the function, you have to pass in the parameters that go to these parameters here. So passing in the name, title, age, is married, spouse. And so we will use that one. So hello, my name is Hank Hill. I'm assistant manager at Strickland Propane. I am married to Peggy Hill. So any questions with that one?
Quick question. I was going to say, since this is all loaded, it doesn't matter if your definition is above your function, does it? Function call.
I
swap those, and it should still work.
What was that?
You could swap those. So where you're actually calling introduction, if you put it above your declaration, will it still work?
I'm not sure. Let's take a look at that. Nope, doesn't look like it.
Yeah. No,
Is it supposed to?
I don't know. Put it above one. Put it above your declaration, but below your variables.
Let's see.
Yeah, right there where your cursor was. Yep.
Yep. So just got to have at least the variables so that you can pass in those as the parameters. All right. So any more questions on that one?
No, I don't think so.
All right. So looks like this is the last one. And we will open this. So this one is an array. So here we declare an array with brackets. I'll stretch this. So you declare an array with brackets, and so I'm passing in a bunch of strings into this array. And so it's the cousins array. So Jacob, Kenny, Josh, Haley, Madison, Evan, Brody, Savannah, Abigail, Colton. And I'm printing to the screen my cousins are, new line, new line. And I'm using a for loop with variable I starting at 0. And for every number in I less than cousins.length, which is how you get how many items are in this. It prints the entry in that spot in the array, and then a new line. And so, as you can see, it's doing that. My cousins are Jacob, Kenny, Josh, Haley, Madison, Evan, Brody, Savannah, Abigail, and Colton. And the other subject in the Excel document said associative arrays, but as I was looking up associative arrays, let's see, 3 schools.
Yeah, there are none.
Yeah, I was saying doesn't support arrays with named indexes, so wasn't sure about that. So that's just all I've got there. But
no, that's
yeah.
I think that's right, because I found that at several different other places as well.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, so did I.
Yeah, so if we're wrong and it is included on the spreadsheet correctly, then I guess we will hear about that, and then we can fix that. So any questions about these arrays?
Yeah, so It's just that it's not supported in JavaScript because it's just a map, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the problem is that you shouldn't be doing that in JavaScript.
Yeah, it just says it does not support arrays
Yeah.
with named indexes.
Yeah, it is like a map or like a hash, and it's not supported in JavaScript. In fact, I went out to the Firefox to actually, what is it, the MDN, and it says right there it's not. So it's not just that WSchools is outdated or anything.
Yeah.
Oh.
So any questions about arrays?
I do not.
Do arrays all have to be the same item type? So can you have a number in there instead of Kenny?
Well, I've done that sort of thing in the past in other classes with to store data. Like a customer's got a name and they might have like an ID number or something like that. So I believe
that's usually an object. I mean, this is just saying,
Yes.
what if
right.
What if one of your items is a number instead of a string?
Yeah.
Is it still an array?
I
I can't remember.
can't remember either. I'll have to check back on that and get back to you guys for that one.
You should try it. You should just replace one.
Let's try it.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see here. 2. Oh, yep.
Hey,
I think
Cool.
it converts it.
All right.
I think it converts it.
But how does it know which to convert it to? Like, how does it know, hey, this 2 should be a string instead of trying to make these strings into numbers or something?
Yeah, I don't know. Try one other thing real quick. Make your Jacob a 1. So make your first 2 elements numbers. Then let's see what happens. Yeah.
1, 2.
It's not a heavily typed language. So it seems to adjust. Now the question is if you were actually, so when you're, and I'm not saying to try it here now, but when you're actually doing cousins I, would it do string manipulation or would it do addition when that's a number, right? Yeah, I'm not messing with it here, but I'm just saying that.
What's that you mean? I'm not sure what you mean.
So for example, let's say right now in your document, right, you have cousins 1, and instead of your BR, let's say you had plus cousins I plus 1. So on the same line, you would put Josh and then Haley, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what would happen with your 1 and 2? Would it put 1 and 2 with a space between them, or would it put just a 3?
Well, maybe we should give that a try.
Yeah, now we have to.
Let's see.
My vote's a 3.
Cousins.
I plus 1.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this will just print them.
No.
Oh, huh. 2, 4. That's interesting.
It added it. So the first one, it looks like it added them.
Yeah, so it so it just doubled everything. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So it is treating them like numbers then.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
Not strings. It's not converting it. It is actually a number.
All right. Well, I guess that answers the question pretty definitively then. All right. So any other questions you guys think?
Don't think so.
All right.
And I will say I'll apologize for questions like that. I'm a tester by heart, software quality for 27 years. So those kind of things, I just see them and I can't resist not wondering how they work.
Yeah, no problem.
That's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
It is, and that'd be the good thing about having the code versus the fancy PowerPoint, because it will be harder for me to do that. So that's good to know.
Yep.
Are you guys having any problems with my microphone? Like, is it cutting out at all or anything?
We can't hear you, Jessica. Your microphone's cutting out.
Hey.
I'm hearing you fine.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. You're coming good.
Because I think I'm next. Let me see. Share my screen and then find my fancy PowerPoint. Is it showing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can't see you guys anymore, so I don't know.
I'll stay unmuted.
Okay, so I am doing JavaScript objects. So what is it? It's a variable that contains many different values, which we were just talking about. They're given in the name value pairs, sort of like we had with maps and stuff in C++. And so here we've got our regular variable, and then this is what the object variable declaration would look like. So we've got the first name with the value, the last name with the value, and the GPA with the value. To create one, it's just you use this object literal, which is what I just showed, but the spacing and line breaks don't matter. So you could do either one and it would show up just the same. To access the properties, you just do the object after it's created. So like the last one was student, and then the first name property. And so you get Fred, because we had Fred Flintstone. And you can also access them like an array, but then you have to put the property in quotation marks like this, and then you would also get Fred for the first name. They can also be accessed in a loop. I'm going to have all sorts of things popping up apparently. So here is an example of a loop. So this is just a different kind of for loop where it has X and it goes through student. It'll go through every single property until it stops. And so here we've got Fred Flintstone. His GPA is 3.5. It does not obviously print the name, so we don't know what any of this means, but it will print the values. Are there any questions so far?
Nope.
Nope.
Just that I didn't notice that it was Fred Flintstone immediately, but my brain was playing the Flintstones theme song, and then I was thinking, I wonder why I'm playing the Flintstones theme song. That was
because we were talking about the Flintstones, yes. So after you've created the object, you can add and delete properties if you realize later on that you need it to have something else. So it's pretty simple. You would just put the object name, which again was student, and then the new property name. So if we wanted to give him a major web development, he would now have that property. And then deleting them is just as easy. You would say delete the property or the object name and then the property. And you can also use the delete like an array by calling it in quotation marks with the property name. So it's pretty straightforward. The nice thing is that the objects can also have methods or functions. So it's like they're little classes or something. But anyways, so we've got student, here's Fred Flintstone again. And then if we call this function down here, it will return his first and last name. And you put the function name here, which is what you'll call. To access it, you would use the object name method name. So we've got student.full name, and you have to have these open and close parentheses to get Fred Flintstone to get it to work. If you don't include the open and close parentheses, you will get the function definition, which might be useful if you're trying to debug something. I don't know, but if you forget the parentheses, this is what would show up instead of the actual value. Any questions? I want to keep going. Okay, so we've got getters and setters. We can do that too. They are a little bit different than defining any other function. So you'd have the get, and then so here's fname, and then set for first name. But otherwise, it looks exactly the same as getters and setters and other programming languages. To call them is a little bit different. So you would say student.fname to get it. So like if I was going to store that in another variable, if you wanted to set it, then you would just set it equal to a new value. So now Fred's name is Pebbles. So now it's Pebbles Flintstone instead. You don't actually use the get or set while you're accessing the functions.
So that's interesting. So with a method, you have to include the open and close.
Yes.
But with the getter, you don't.
Yeah, it's with the getter and the setter, you don't either, because putting this student.fname equals pebbles will just send this pebbles into the function as a parameter and then set it. And yes, I did notice that you do not need to use the parentheses. As far as I know, that's the only method type or on the objects that you don't have to use them. You can add a function also later after the object's been created. It's the same kind of an idea. So like if we wanted to be able to return the last name in GPA, you would have the object name, and then so info would be the method name, and then you would define the function here. And this would now be part of the object. You'd be able to access that just like any other object. So you can also have constructors. So this would be like, I have my object of a student, but if this was for like a classroom, and so I'd have a lot of different students, I would want to be able to use the constructor as a blueprint, just kind of like any other object language. So here, what the difference is, to make this a constructor, the student would need to be capitalized. And that is more, I guess that's more of a, what am I looking for? Best practice kind of thing. Yes. So here, so we would pass in first, last, GPA, and then we use this, which I guess I've been doing before, but I'm assuming you guys are familiar with this. So here's our constructor. Same idea, it's going to assign these parameters into these variables. So if we're going to instantiate an object off of a constructor, you would do this. So here we have our valedictorian, and then we bring in the new keyword. So it'd equal new student, and then we would put in our values. And you can put in, so we've got strings, and then, I mean, in JavaScript, you don't have to define what type of a variable it is. So you can put in the string, and then the GPA. And then here's our honors student is another new student, and her name is Wilma, and that's her GPA. You can add properties or methods to objects, but it would only be added to the object specified. So once valedictorian and the honors student are instantiated, you would do something like this. So you'd have like the valedictorian has a speech title called what comes next, and then here's the function to retrieve the speech title. But this property and function will only be located in the valedictorian's object. You would not be located in the honors object. Yeah, so once they're instantiated, they're separate. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Nope.
Okay. So if you want to add methods or properties to the constructors, you can't, it's not as simple. They cannot be added in the same way as they're added to objects. So if you had like an object that's person, you couldn't say for the constructor, I'm sorry, the constructor's person, you couldn't say person dot speech title equals that. You have to add it to the actual constructor. And so then you use this keyword named prototype, and it's sort of like JavaScript's inheritance. It's a little bit different, but that's pretty much what it is. So you would, here's our student constructor again, and then you would add this dot prototype dot speech title, and here's equals what comes next. And then student dot prototype, same thing with the method, speech info, so here's my function. So now both the valedictorian and honors objects would have both of these. Now, the speech title would be set to what comes next for both of them. I could have put anything there, put a space so that would be blank, but now both of them will have those two functions. I don't quite know the history behind prototype or why we have to use that, but that's the only way to add something to all of the objects that you've already created. And then these are just my resources. And that's the end of, I think that hit everything for objects. I can't find, I don't know how to get back to you guys. Are there any questions about it at all, or?
No, it seemed pretty good.
Yeah, good job. It's great.
Okay. Did I stop sharing my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
you did.
Okay, so now it's my turn, isn't it?
Yes.
Hold on 1 second. Move from my second monitor to my first monitor here. Okay. Well, let me know if you guys can. Oh, what do you know? It would let me do it on screen too, but that's all right. We'll do it on screen one. Can you see these now?
Yep.
Yes.
You're
Okay,
showing
so I have the JSON stringify and parse were the two functions that I had. So basically they are the yin and yang of each other. Stringify takes an object and creates a string. Parse takes a string and creates an object. And both of these are, all my examples are assuming that you are getting this, the variables in from a server or from some other place. For the code, I've actually just hard-coded both the object here and then a string, and to use as we go through. So basically, both stringify and parse have a couple of parameters they can use. And the basic one is just using it alone. So given that you have an object here, so I have an object, first name, last name, age, city, and state. If I just call stringify, then all it does is create this string here, which is output. So here you can see that's all I did here was actually called it to fill in the variable for the HTML code. Didn't create a variable, just did it very straightforward there. The second parameter you can use is called a callback function. And so you can actually do something with your object before you return it as a string. So in this case, you'll notice what I've done is in the object, the state is just CA. And I've gone and said, we want to make that California. So here in the code, basically, when you're calling it, here I have replace state. This is my other function. And so you can come down here and see replace state, which is basically taking a key value pair, and then you do whatever. In this case, I have a switch statement to make sure I'm getting the right key, because what it'll do is it takes each key value pair. So from this object, when I call stringify with the state replace, it's first going to do first name and Marco, then it's going to do last name and Polo. It's going to go through all of these. So for this particular case, I only care about the state property. And then once I'm there, I've switched it to uppercase, so I don't have to worry about both lower, upper, mixed, whatever. And then I return the value that I want. Important thing to remember on these callback functions is that you want to make sure you're calling back the value, whether you pass it through your change or not. Otherwise, those other values would be dropped. So if I had the return statement in here, for example, and not out here, then only the value from state would be returned as part of the callback function. Does that make sense? You can see it. I do it right here on the next one where I switch it from upper to lower. You see I have a return here, but I also have a return out here. I'll show
So
you that.
if you didn't have the return and say it wasn't California, then nothing would be returned and you'd lose your state altogether. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Well, not
Okay.
just California. When the first key value pair comes through. So when first name comes through, when last name comes through.
Okay.
See, I can show you if you want. Real quick. If I put the return here inside the if statement and not here, all right? We did not. Okay. Now the return statement for this is just inside the if statement. Now let me see, am I showing the right one? No, let me show my local one. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so now let's see, did not make that change. Now, this is what happens when you try to do a live demo and you change something in the real time.
That's all right.
Because I know it said it made when I was reading it, it said make sure. In fact, that's why I put this comment in here. Also return the unmodified string value pairs to pass it through. Let's play. We'll play with it in just a second. Anyhow, there's a third. There's the third value you can also pass for stringify. So the first calling the stringify, notice here it's just the object is the only parameter. The second one is the object and that callback function. The third one, you can do the object and the callback function if you want, or not. But then this is a padding, basically, and it can either be a number or a string. So here, when I call it, so this is the normal one. See how it puts these dots? So basically, you're padding each of those strings in case you want to put spacing. And again, you should be able to do, and you can do up to the number 10. Oh, I know what I didn't do. I didn't save it before. That's why. That's why it didn't. Yeah, see? Now it's not working. See, it's undefined.
Okay.
So
then,
it didn't even return the state? Or is that because it's commented out?
No, it's because I commented out this one too. So now,
okay.
Now if I save it, now it'll work. So now if we do it here, and then this one should only return, no, still only returned. Return value should be right there, unless, well, I know how I can make it. Put it there, it should do it. Right now. No, it's still undefined. Oh, I know why. Sorry. I know exactly why. It's doing that because the first one's coming back as undefined. First name is coming back as undefined.
Oh.
And that's what we're seeing. That's all we're seeing there. Because the very first one that comes through is not defined, and so that's the error we're getting.
So it's sending through every key value pair. So if it's not state, then it just ignores it and moves on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So in your callback function, you can actually do more manipulation. You don't have to do just one value. I just did it in here in my example, right? But you could do each of them. You could do, you know, for first name, or you could do while. You could do whatever you want for all of the values.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so parse. So again, stringify has 3. you either call it alone, you call it with the callback function, or like I said, you can add spaces to it. Parse is pretty much the same, except it's just opposite again. It creates objects, and you can see them really well when you do the developer tools and the console. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. So here I just did a parse on the string, but if you look, it is actually, you can see that it's an object. It's not as obvious here. I mean, I could have done it some other way, but you can see it there. So when I'm calling parse, again, it's the same kind of thing. I'm just running JSON parse through my string, which was this string variable up here that I created, this constant. And I did specifically run it out to the console so I could see what was going on with it before I filled out my table. And then I just had another function down here to basically grab each of the elements out of the object and put them into a table. And then you can do the same thing with it with a callback function. So if you'll notice here, I've got capitalizations in the email, and so all this callback function does is makes it all lowercase. So without the callback function, it comes in just like it was from the string. And with the callback function, I manipulated, that was this one I was showing you earlier with the switch to lower, right? Again, it only looks at the email and then changes the value. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last thing with these, both of these actually work with arrays and not just objects. And they treat them the same way. So here I have an object, or I have an array, and here I have a string. And so if I take the array, I can switch it to a string, or if I have the string, I can switch it back to an array. And again, you can see on the console here that that one's actually an array. So it started out as a string, and then we switched, made it an array. So so it works with both objects or arrays, both of them. Any other questions?
Nope.
Any questions on
That was great.
my code? Okay.
I will want to poke around with it a little bit later, probably.
It's up in my GitHub already, so.
Cool. I got to put my stuff on there. No, it's probably too simple for anyone to want to look at.
Now, where's the unsharing?
Well, great. That's pretty good. Good job, guys. Thanks for giving me the week off.
You got next week, though.
I do. Yeah. Actually, so next week it is me and who else?
I've got local storage.
Local storage.
I probably have something then too, but I haven't looked.
You have the DOM,
Okay.
but then you get 2 weeks off after that. No, 1 week. Looks like everybody gets 1 week off. And I noticed, Alec, sorry, you're the only one that ended up with 4.
That's okay. This first one was probably the easiest one ever, so it makes up for it a little bit.
Very cool.
Well, great.
Have a good one, guys.
Okay, so I will post this to where are we supposed to post this, or the discussion board?
Yeah.
Discussion.
Okay.
And then we can
Great.
each put the links to our GitHubs in there as well, too.
Oh, it's a post, yeah, for our group. Awesome.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Great,
Have a
guys. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.